Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Jammer 360. My name's Billy. Today we are far from home. We are actually at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and at the moment we are at Prisoner of War Indian Scout Cemetery on Fort Sill, and we're going to come over here and take a look at Geronimo's grave. I probably had the sun in your face there. Now, Geronimo, a lot of people talk about how he was born in New Mexico and raised in New Mexico. Well, the research I did through the History Channel showed that he was actually born in Arizona, and he spent a lot of time in Mexico, or New Mexico. At the time, it was Mexico. He really grew a dislike to the Mexicans early on in his life. When he was 17, he was already married, and he ended up having a couple children. And the tribe would go off, the men would go on hunting parties or raiding parties and stuff. And on one of those trips, the Mexican army came into their village and killed everybody. All the women and children were killed. All the men were gone. So that started Geronimo's hate of the outside and him going after anybody that he thought was a threat to him. So he started doing attacks on Mexican bands and stuff. And the United States was actually kind of at war with Mexico at the time. After the war ended and they signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the Americans owned the area, and then the white men started coming in and settling, and they were causing problems with him too. So then he started his fight against it. I got some kind of bug crawling on me. So he started going after the American people and doing raids on them because they kept attacking him. So here is Geronimo's actual grave. You can see people have left things for him, leaving pennies, pictures. There's a little picture of him. Somebody keeps stealing the head off of this eagle. They've actually replaced it a few times, and for some reason people come over here and they break off this head and take it, which is just sad. But you can see people leaving their offerings to Geronimo. Now beside us here are members of his family. Like, here's I think it was a granddaughter, but this lady here was actually I think it was his 9th wife. Supposedly he had 9 wives and that was his last one. And some of the wives he did have at the same time. They would just come into his life and then they would leave, and okay, it's not his wife anymore. Or they would just actually have him, but he was always on the move, so he would start new families. But all over this whole cemetery are filled with people that were scouts. They when they were captured, the way it worked is when they were all captured, they were put here like as a POW. They were in the camps, and the army actually allowed them later on to enlist into the army. Geronimo actually enlisted into the U.S. Army also. He never went out anywhere because he was stuck on here, but it allowed people to come and meet him, and he would actually sell his autograph to people, and people that actually had cameras. There wasn't a whole lot of cameras back then. You could get your picture with him for a fee. But most of these other people that are out here, they actually became scouts for the cavalry. So they would go ahead and they could track down any renegades and stuff, and they'd help them. And with that, they were given a lot more privileges on the reservation. So you can see there's not a whole lot of it. It's kind of scattered out. I don't think they really had a rhyme or reason when they were building the cemetery. I think they were just bringing the guys out here and they would just bury them, and then started sort of putting them in line. But you can see they're just scattered everywhere. There's also a couple other little outcrops that you can drive into that have a few of them, but this is like the main cemetery that they call the POW cemetery. Now back around 2005, I believe it was, his descendants of his tried to petition to have him moved from here. He has several of his family members are buried in New Mexico, and they were trying to have him moved to New Mexico. And I guess I never did hear the end, but it's been 15-20 years since they tried to do this, and he is still here. So I think that the lawsuit had failed. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna leave a penny on his wife's, and I'm gonna leave one up here on Geronimo himself. I'm really not sure what it symbolizes, but it sure couldn't hurt. Okay, so I went and looked up the whole why you leave a penny at the gravestone. It says that people that leave a penny are leaving a part of themselves to the deceased, and it's a show of honor to them. So we left one with Geronimo and with Geronimo's 9th wife. So if you had a family member buried here in this Indian cemetery or POW cemetery or the Scout cemetery, depending on who you want to listen to, what it's called, your family members can be buried here too. As you can see, this one right here, I don't even know how you would say his name, but you can see he was buried here in 76. And then you've got another one buried 74, and this one 2003, and James here in 63. And then there's one over here who was in the Coast Guard, and he died in 2012. And he chose to be born here along with his ancestors. And I was looking at this one from 63. It says, Warm Springs Apache U.S. Scout, last survivor of Chief Victorio's band. So that kind of goes back to where I was saying that they allowed them to join the military and become scouts. And then they have the military type headstones because they, in the eyes of the U.S. government, they redeemed themselves. So get to Fort Sill and to Geronimo's grave is you have to come down from Oklahoma City. You come down the turnpike, Interstate 44 to Lawton, Oklahoma, and you'll see an exit for Fort Sill. You come to Fort Sill, come to the gate, and tell them that you are looking to see Geronimo's grave, and they will give you directions to get out here. There's some signs that get you all the way to it. Anybody can come out here. You might have to get a base pass. If you have somebody that has a military ID or a government ID to help you get in, that'd be much easier, but you can come in to see it. All right, so that is our little short visit with Geronimo. A little later today, we're gonna head over to this place called Medicine Park, and I'll show you around there, and then maybe we'll go over to Mount Scott. For those of you that live in the Pacific Northwest where I live, you're gonna see Mount Scott and you're gonna laugh because it's not a mountain, it's kind of a hill compared to us. But in Oklahoma, where you can stand on your tiptoes and see all the way across the state, Mount Scott is pretty important to them. So I look forward to seeing you all again real soon. Bye.